When we first started sailing, we made a bunch of mistakes. Some of these at anchor, but I got stared down by bitchwings so many times that eventually I learned a few very important lessons when it comes to proper anchoring etiquette. Anchoring is a spectator sport. Once you get there, heads start popping out from the boats like meerkats looking at what you're doing. If you don't avoid these mistakes, instead of being invited over for beer, you will just get bitchwings. We are sailing around the world the hard way. On our abandoned 1980s ketch, refitted on a very tight budget, now has all the luxuries you could ever want. This channel is more about technical advice and sharing knowledge than the journey itself. Sometimes with science, sometimes our mistakes, but always having fun. As soon as the boat arrives, everyone starts paying close attention to what the captain is doing. And it's not just curiosity, it's because seasoned captains know that an idiot like me that had no idea what he was doing might be about to anchor right next to their boat and turning what could be a lovely time at anchor into a nightmare. So this video is about mistakes that I made that drove our social credit way down when it comes to our anchoring neighbors. There's nothing worse than being at anchor, enjoying a sundowner, and all of a sudden it starts smelling like someone just ate coleslaw and beans and deviled eggs all at the same time. And you turn to your wife and you ask, "Did you fart?" And she goes like, "No, I'm not falling for that one again." And just when you're about to have an explosive argument, you finally see it. A huge plume of floating shit drifting down the anchorage coming from the boat in front of you. Yeah, that really sucks. So here's the lesson. Don't forget to change the Y valve from discharge overboard into discharge to the tank, or close your tank. It depends on how your sailboat works. But yeah, I might have forgotten and I might have gotten, bitchwings the next day. On the same note, even though organic trash, it's organic and it will eventually decompose, it floats for a while. Like, orange peels and banana peels and, leftover beans. So in the beginning, I just thought, this is organic, it's fish food, so just, throw it overboard. But yeah, no. Not only does it create bad environment, if you're offshore, that's fine, but I quickly learned that this is a no-no behavior at anchor, because, yeah, you guessed it, I got bitchwings. I used to think my music was absolutely freaking awesome. Turns out, it sucks. Who knew that some people out there don't like Pink Floyd? It turns out that me playing Pink Floyd so that all the anchorage can hear is just as bad as the boat full of drunk teenagers that spent more on the sound system than they did on the anchor chain, and they're listening to Taylor Swift and something called a Dua Lipa? Who knew? So after getting bitchwings a couple of times, I finally understood that I should be respectful and only turn the sound up to the max if it's Daft Punk. This mistake happened because I didn't think about it. I wasn't using my brain. So we bought a 20 horsepower outboard for our dinghy, and when testing it out, we're on the boat, I put it on the dinghy, and I just go, around the boat a few times and testing out the engine, and all of a sudden I look around and all the sailboats are going like this because I'm creating a huge wake all over the place. And of course, there were, you guessed it, bitchwings. But yeah, I'm sorry, it just happened. I never did it again. Although we still need to go to and from the boat with our dinghies, there's better ways to do it. The trick is to always try and pass in front of other boats. Be careful with the chain, of course. But if you pass in front of the boat, the wake doesn't affect the boats that much. If you're going fast, make sure you're planing because, it does a much less wake. And if going displacement, we need to go as slow as we can so it doesn't, rock a boat. And if you're one of those humans that has a jet ski, don't plot a course through the sailboats in the middle of the anchorage and pull a wakeboarder behind you. That's not fun. You should go play near the rocks. It's much safer over there. when we didn't have mast steps, the halyards come down through the mast, and what we do now, because we have mast steps, we weave it through the mast so they don't bang on anything. I have a video about that. I'll put it at the end of the video. It's a good watch. Anyway, what we needed to do to prevent the halyards from banging on the mast is when we get to the anchorage, we put a line and stretch them out so that, they're not banging on the mast. But, sometimes you get to an anchorage, it's time to go to dinner, and you just leave the boat, go to dinner. Dinner turns into drinking a little bit or having fun, and you come back at 6 in the morning and it's windy and your boat is making a huge racket in the middle of the anchorage. And you guessed it, bitch wings! This is not just bad for the halyards themselves, but also for your mast and your social credit. You will never get invited to a potluck. Whomever arrives last needs to move if it's necessary. So take this into consideration when you're dropping your ground tackle. That's just a fancy word for anchor. You need to really know about the tide and the forecasted wind to be able to predict where you are going to swing. Because you might get there, drop your ground tackle, and everything is fine, and once the tide changes, you're right on top of another boat or its anchor. And that sucks. And I made this mistake in the beginning more than a couple of times until finally I learned and I started to visualize. It's difficult to explain with words, so I made this small demonstration, and of course you already know this, but some people might not. Like I didn't when I started sailing, and I did this mistake. I made this mistake. So let's say you get to the anchorage and you have two boats, they're far apart and there's space in the middle for another boat, and you get there and you drop your anchor, so that you are right in the middle. This all should be fine if you all have exactly the same amount of chain and exactly the same thickness of chain, which very rarely happens. So let's say that is the case. You have exactly the same amount of chain and exactly the same thickness, and the boats weigh the same and behave the same. Even so, you have an issue, which is if the tide changes or the wind changes and you're all pulling this way now, even though you had a lot of space in the beginning, now the boats are really close to each other. They no longer have the same amount of space that they did before. Worse than that, if you want to leave, now your anchor is below this boat and you put your anchor there. He was already there. So it's on you to fix the issue. Or if this guy wants to leave, he will have to come up and push your boat to the side so he can pick his anchor up. If nobody wants to leave, that's not a big issue, because then the tide will change again and you go back to the original position. But now let's say that your chain is 8 millimeter and he has a much thicker chain than yours. So when the tide changes, you will be pulling on your chain and he will be dragging the chain very slowly. And as your chain is very light, you will be in the, full stretch, but he won't. And the boats might get really close to each other. If you're on this situation, the best thing to do in this case is to anchor here. And you stagger the boats. So this way, when the tide changes, you are not in line with any of the boats. This would be, a better way to do it. Or you could do it up in front, depending on the anchorage. You can, put your anchor more in front, so you end up over there, and when the tide changes, you end up far away from their anchors and their boats. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. It's just very difficult to put into words, because if you don't take this into consideration and you end up like 2 meters from the next boat, you guessed it, you get pitch wings! Well, we never made this mistake. We don't even have a generator on board. But since I'm talking about being annoying at anchor, I should just throw it in there. If you're one of those people that, oh, it's a little bit hot, I think I'll have the generator running all night so I can be a little bit cooler with my air conditioning, we freaking hate you. Because sound travels underwater like crazy, and we're sleeping right next to the hull all night listening to that droning of the generator. And we're not getting any benefit from it. You're getting cool, we're just getting the freaking noise. And if you're thinking, well, at least people know that I'm rich because I can afford to have the generator running all night and have air conditioning, we all think you're poor, because if you really had money, you would have a big enough battery bank so that you wouldn't have to run the Jesus goddamn noisy thing all freaking night. Was that a little bit too much? I'm sorry. I love you. I just hate the noise. And I'm sure if you do that, you got a lot of bitch wings. So after getting bitch wings, why am I closing my eyes? After getting bitch wings, So after getting bitch wings, so after getting bitch wings, anyway, that's all I got for you today. And if you're still watching, you're a freaking hero. And to all our superheroes, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I have a couple of shout outs to give today, so here we go. If you don't know, members Skipper and Above get a personal shout out because it's the least I can do. And this week we have Luxodrum. Mate, thank you so much for your support. And we have as well another skipper, Andrzej Kolodinsky, 6162. Did I got that right? Mate, your name is hard to pronounce. Thank you so much for your support. And we have a captain. Ooh, we have to do something special for that. So, to Aster Smitham. Okay, Aster Smitham, thank you so much for your support. That was stupid. Anyway, look, I really appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.